think project management is a great starting point for whatever industry you're looking to get into, because you get exposed to the end-to-end thing that's being produced in the project. So it is a great starting point. My only advice for somebody who doesn't have project management experience, in order to okay, how do I get in to start with, is to work somewhere that's already got a very strong project management practice. So then you can learn from that, because if you jump in and try and manage projects without experience, without anybody to learn from, then, clearly that's a tricky one to start with.
Well, in project management too, even if you could use that and pivot to a lot of different places, couldn't you? You might find that you don't pivot to IT, although you probably should. But you could pivot to so many different directions with that,
Well, in the case of software development too, I mean, there's so many different kinds of software developers that might be working on the same team. And a lot of times they'll really get pigeonholed where they won't know exactly what it is that the other people do. They'll just know that here's my responsibilities, and they don't really worry too much about making it easy for the other teams. So as a project manager, you'll get to see how they all exactly
kind of lose the big picture.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a great way to, and really like the software developers that end up being the most appreciated members of a company are usually the ones that are thinking about that big picture, right? It's not, it doesn't just come down to technical skills most of the time. That's obviously important, but
it's understanding where your part is and how you're contributing to the end goal of the project, the vision of the project. And that's a really good part that the project manager can play to guide everybody towards that goal.
Exactly. And you also, again, I'm just using software development because that's what I'm familiar with. Maybe it's different in, the strictly IT world, but as a project manager, you start to get a sense too of how long different tasks take, and you learn the scale of different tasks, which is actually something that software developers tend to be very bad at, right? And so a good project manager will usually take what the programmer estimates and double it, maybe, right?
Or encourage more accurate estimating as we go along.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think people in general just have this blindness toward how long things actually take them, right? Everyone's heard people say, oh yeah, I'll be there in a minute, and it takes 10 minutes. And software developers are notorious for that, for sure. So, but just for anyone, you start to learn what size task is this, right? Something that sounds simple, like could you add a like button to this page, might actually be very complicated, even though most people wouldn't have known that going in.
Yeah.
Or it might not be.
It
might
sounds
be
simple. No, it's just a button, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think the consensus is yes. That would be a great way to get into it. At least get your hands dirty and contribute before you even have any real hard technical skills, which take a long time to develop for sure.
Well, certainly from my point of view, in terms of preparing students for certification, I think the CompTIA Project Plus is a really good starting point. And I think the reason why I like it doesn't assume any prior knowledge. It really is very much, okay, let's just get the jargon out there and understand some of the processes and some of the words that project managers use and people expect you to use. So I do like the CompTIA approach. It's looking at smaller projects. It's looking more at IT projects. So it is a really good starting point.
Yeah. So it's the classic chicken before the egg question. And some people might get hired because they have a number of certifications, but they don't really have all that much experience. Other people have a lot of experience. And so, but they have no certifications. And so that might be appealing to an employer. I don't know if there's a solid answer to that question. All I would say is if you don't have certifications and you don't have a job, get the certifications because you don't have the job. So get the certifications and then you at least have something to get started with.
And I think it's great if you can get a job where they do support you getting certifications to help you grow and learn.
And also don't be afraid to start small. You're probably not going to work for Microsoft right in your first job, if you're just getting started or something like that, So don't be afraid to work for a small tech support company or for a help desk or something like this, and a lot of organizations will also possibly have some kind of an entrance quiz or exam to see what kind of things you know. And you might be able to sufficiently answer those based on what you already have, even though you don't have any certifications. And then especially, I'm well into my career. But don't forget, especially if you're younger, and I mean anything younger than 40, really, you have more time than you think you do. And you have more energy than you think you do. Watch less Netflix. Stay off social media for a while. Get the certification. You might already have a day job where you're working 40 hours a week, and you're tired, and you might have a family. You do have the time, but do you have the motivation? And nothing's easy, and you got to put the work in. You got to put the effort in.
Yeah, great advice, Dad.
Well, I can't speak to the networking industry too much with programming because I focus more on like web development kind of stuff. But I would say that it's never going to hurt you, right? Knowing how to write simple programs, and especially knowing how to automate your day-to-day tasks, right? There's so many people that when they tell me what they do in a day, it's like, that you could write a program to do all of that for you, right? And then that would free you up to do whatever you want instead. And I don't know how possible that is in many of the IT spaces, but I think that, it's a tool, right? And it's the code that's required to automate something that you do usually isn't that hard, right? You're the only one that's going to see it. Usually it's a pretty straightforward task that you're trying to automate. And so it's not something that most people want to get into either, right? It's because it sounds scary. Most people are just content knowing that they can set something up by clicking and going here and going there.
But once people get the bug, once they've automated one thing, it's like,
you'll never stop.
Oh yeah.
You'll start thinking about automating automations.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's my take on it anyway.
It depends on where the person is now. If they're just getting started in IT, you got to get started with somewhere. And I would recommend A+, Network Plus, possibly Linux Plus, those sorts of things. CompTIA has a lot of great starter certifications. And then you have to decide where you want to go from there. Those are really good starting points. Also, FC061, I think it's called. I can't remember exactly, but there's an intro to IT that's also a good certification to get started. So it really, again, it depends on where they're starting from. Beyond that, I don't know, because I don't know where they are.
And whatever support your employer is prepared to, but you just take it. If you've got an employer that says, well, we can put you through Search X and you're not necessarily that interested, go for it. If they're prepared to support you to do it, then do it.
Yeah, I mean, certifications aren't nearly as big in the software development industry because most of the time you can tell what someone knows how to do by just what they've done, right? Their portfolio. And so I would say there's obviously a few options if you wanted to get into software development, but if you wanted to, my biggest recommendation is just to find something you want to build and learn how to build it. It's going to take a while. You're going to be amazed how difficult it is at first, but at the end, you're not only going to have a better real world knowledge than most people who just read through like Java 101 or Python 101. You're going to actually have a portfolio piece that you can show employers. And again, the code isn't going to be pretty at first, but if you're trying to get into a field, most of the time employers will train you in that stuff, right? You'll be working with more of a senior programmer who will show you the ropes, but what they want to see is that you took the initiative to build something in the first place. That speaks volumes. Like, I didn't realize this until I was like on the other side of the table, right? Reading through resumes. I mean, it's just a bunch of black and white blobs at the end of the day. It's nice to, but if someone can talk passionately about like, yeah, I'm building this thing and I had this idea a while back and I thought it would be really cool to make a website or write a program that does X or Y, that person's going to get the job every time. So that's my take on it.
I think, especially when you're getting started, you don't have a resume that's really particularly full. It's so much depends upon drive and attitude. And it's a delicate balance. I understand people being nervous, interviewing for jobs, especially when you're getting started. But you have to be able to project some level of confidence without being arrogant or overconfident. And that is a delicate balance. I do recommend you could even interview with friends.
I was going to say practice and get feedback.
Yes, yes.
Because when you practice these, because it's excruciating, isn't it? Yeah. Having an interview, it's awful. We all hate it. But when you practice doing something, it's a bit like jumping into a pool of cold water. If you do it more often, it becomes less of a horrible thing to do, and get feedback and get more comfortable with the format, and you will be able to shine.
Yeah. And one of the things that will be, if you think you're nervous interviewing with an employer, try interviewing with a relative. Because that, for a lot of our families, that's more nerve-wracking than interviewing with an employer. So yeah, give that a try. And also, while you're studying on certifications and things like this, I really think that people skills are kind of the unspoken hero of a lot of jobs, you know.
They're very underrated.
Yes. And so that goes a long ways. You want to be someone that's good to work with. It's not that a popularity contest, but it does. You do have to be somebody that people can work with. You can be a genius, and you can't hold a job because nobody wants to work with you.
That's absolutely true.
And I think it is.
That's why nobody wants to work with me.
Well,
by the way.
yeah, but we were glossing over that, James. Nobody wanted to tell you that. But no, it is true, because you see people that have a very natural ability to get on with people. They're charismatic and they are enviable, aren't they? It's like, oh, I wish I could be like that. But these are skills you can learn.
True.
They really are. I mean, how do you learn them? Well, that's a whole different story. But having confidence that you can, fake it till you make it. Act being a confident person, and then you'll find yourself feeling more confident. I mean, it's skills you can learn.
And also, if you have the opportunity for it, when you get an opportunity for an interview, make sure that you know as much about that company as you possibly can know. I mean, deep search that company and make sure you drop that information in the interview, because they will know that you care about that company and you're interested in what they do and what their product is and what their objectives are.
Even outside the site, that's true really for any job. Like my wife used to work as a teacher, and when she said that whenever they would interview candidates, first thing they would ask is like something just from the district's website, right? Something that could have just easily been found on that website. Yeah. So like, what are you?
It's like, did they even put that little bit of effort in?
Yeah, right. And it's definitely true. It's definitely, if you're expecting someone to spend 40 plus hours a week doing what you do, they should be a little bit interested in it to begin with, right? Otherwise, it's not gonna, if they just want a job, right? If they're just looking to get a job because they want a job, they're probably not going to be the best employee, right? no matter what it is you're doing, no matter what your expectations are, they're just not going to be into it. On another token, though, I think that something that I would recommend that people do, and maybe people wouldn't agree with this, especially interviewers probably wouldn't agree with this because this is going to increase their workload. But I would say a lot of people get too hung up on the just a long list of skills that you have to have in order to apply to this job, right?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, they'll say like
it's
10 years of experience with this, 5
Yeah.
years of experience with this. Yeah. The first thing to know is that most of the time, it's not the people you're going to be working with that came up with that list in the first place, right? I mean, usually it's HR asked like, "Hey, we're going to post some new jobs.
Yeah.
What are some things that would be nice to have?" And just throw out a number. How many years? They're not like.
Yeah.
They're not real limitations.
And a lot of times there's not actually a live human that even has all of those years of experience.
Exactly.
And it breaks my heart that it's very common, particularly for women, to look at a list of what's required and say, oh no, that I can't do all of that. No, go for it anyway. If you've got like a half of what's on that list, give it a go.
Right. Right. Why? Like just when in doubt, the worst thing that could happen is they won't get back to you. Mm-hmm. The worst thing that could happen is not you go into a interview and it doesn't go so well. That's a good thing. Like, what did you lose, right? You didn't have to pay to go into the interview. Maybe it took a little bit of time. Maybe you're ashamed that you weren't able to answer this question correctly.
But it's all good experience. It's all good practice.
That is absolutely the case. And you get less nervous, right? It's like speaking in front of people. It's always going to be terrifying at first, no matter what. So the only way to get over that is to just do it. Again, maybe the interviewers aren't going to like this. Maybe this is going to increase their workload.
And it depends also a little bit on how much you want that job. You know, I mean, if it's something you really want and you can do it. Right. I mean, I always, and I'm kind of old school because I'm old, but I always tried to meet somebody there that had some level of degree of hiring capability, you know, or the manager or somebody, and don't creep them out, but just come in and say, hey, I just wanted to shake your hand. I applied earlier this week. I'm really interested in this job, and I just want you to please, if you would, give my application some consideration. And and just very politely, don't follow them home or anything like that, but something like that. And if you can't get past the gatekeeper, a handwritten note. Say, would you please hand this to Mrs. Johnson? And something. It's always worth it. It's always worth a little bit of effort.
Yeah, and always send a follow-up email thanking them for their time, because most of the time, I mean, if it's a tech company, most of the time the people who are interviewing you have real responsibilities that they're taking a break from to talk to you. So I mean, thank them. Be like, hey, thanks. I know you're busy. Exactly. Just wanted to thank you for talking to me about this opportunity, etc. It doesn't need to be long, doesn't need to be elaborate. Always.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from CBT Nuggets. Oh, and also, if you're new to IT or are interested in an IT career, visit cbtnuggets.com and sign up for a free trial.